What was the worst thing that you did/said while being angry? By Olrazgul.
evenmonkeys says. Threw a $3,000 engagement ring that we never found.
IDoubtThatImDoubting says. When I was 3 years old I got into a fight with my grandma. Nobody remembers what it was about anymore, but apparently it ended with me telling her to call me when she dies, so I could come visit Granddad. She says she never laughed so hard in her life before. Still, I can't help it but feel kind of bad each time she mentions it.
MuchaBienaEngrish says. Back in like 2003, teenage me created a fake AIM name because I suspected my girlfriend was cheating on me. Not only did she flirt with this fake random stranger I created, she confessed to having sex with many different guys. Just bragging about it. Instead of handling this well, I logged into her AIM, I knew her password, and hit on every man she knew and convinced them she liked to bang dogs. Word got around and she got kicked out of her church. Definitely worst angry thing I've done.
medicff says. So this one, in my opinion, was a total accident, but no one believes me. When my brother was like 3 or 4 he kept rolling this stupid brick around, hitting me with it on the foot and ankles. He was pretending to be a dog or something. Anyway, I got mad after him doing it a couple times and grabbed the brick. Since I was mad I went to throw it down. I picked it up, turned 90 degrees to the right and wheeled this brick to the ground as hard as my 7-year-old arms would let me. I didn't know he crawled around, because he was still pretending to be a dog, and I cracked him in the head with it. I knew I was in big trouble because my parents didn't beat me for it. It took like 10 stitches on the back of his head to fix it.
OhLawdSheGae says. I drew my friend burning in lava with the devil hanging out next to him. I was 9. I got expelled from after-school care.
patpatshow says. I threw a rock at the ground and it bounced into my friend's hand, breaking his pinky finger. Total accident and I felt like an idiot.
Sonicler says. I told my mom to go fuck herself at an Old Navy while a young boy with his mom was holding the door for us.
Legit_muffins says. So not as bad as some, but when I was a kid I wanted a hard-boiled egg one afternoon and my mom said no. I asked why and she just said no. I got upset and went to my room. When she went to take a shower or whatever I had the brilliant idea of making my desired egg treat with speed and stealth. I took her coffee mug, filled it with water, dropped the egg in and stuck it in the microwave. I forget how long I set it for, but it was long enough for my mom to come back out to the sound of something cooking in the microwave. She asked me to come to the kitchen, which I shamefully did in defeat. Just as she begins to ask me what I'm cooking, the microwave starts to beep. On the third beep there was this very loud but muffled thump from the microwave. The egg had exploded, the cup had exploded, the microwave was ruined. This wouldn't have been so bad had my family had enough money to replace a microwave and I hadn't wasted eggs.
Wackydetective says. I trashed my house after the doctors told me my mother was dying. I scared the shit out of my brother and my nephew. I'm not really prone to fits of rage or an angry person.
Fievelm says. In a middle school one of my classmates was permanently in a wheelchair. He was also a bit of a bully. He was making fun of me and a friend and in the middle of it I said, "Come on, friend, let's go find some stairs." I still cringe pretty hard about that.
Duck_is_Lord says. I chucked a My Little Pony at my sister's head and hit her smack in the middle with a unicorn horn. This was because she wouldn't let me play as Rarity.
TrueFakeAdult says. My mother's ex-husband and I had a really volatile relationship. He was mentally and emotionally abusive and my mom was an alcoholic. There was one day where things got extremely bad. Both my mom and her ex-husband were drinking. All I did was walk in the door and that's when it all started. I was told I had no friends. I was told my family didn't care about me and that if I disappear it would be a good break because I was disappointing. I was told that they wished I was dead. I kept trying to tell them to leave me alone. I tried hiding in my room too, but they followed me. I at one point finally became so enraged at them I flipped my bed over, Not just the mattress, I'm talking bed frame and all, because I kept a knife under my bed and then chased them out with a knife and told them I would kill them and not to go to sleep. Yeah. That was fun to explain to the cops.
StrawberryR says, "This is relatively low stakes, but I still feel terrible about it. When I was a kid, 12 plus, my sister and I were home alone together frequently because both of our parents worked and I was old enough to babysit. We lived in a house that was too small for all four of us, in a bad neighborhood, and it was a permanently dirty old house that was falling apart. So background stress levels were high, just to set the tone. My sister went to a friend's house to play across the street. Meanwhile, I couldn't find my gem doll that I'd got from a friend online and was looking everywhere for it. They don't make gem anymore, so it was a very important doll for me. While I'm looking, my sister comes home and timidly asks for me." StrawberryR? What? So you know how I went over to neighbor's house to play? Yeah. Her dad got mad at us and ripped the head off of the doll to punish her, but actually it was the one I brought over and I think it was your doll. So naturally I lost my mind and tore into her. I was furious. Not only was that my doll, but it was rare and out of print and already older than either of us, so how dare she steal it from my room and play with it and get it broken. I yelled at her so loud and hard I went hoarse, and she crumbled into tears. I demanded she give me my doll back and not talk to me until Mom and Dad got home. She collapsed onto her bed and sobbed, and I took the doll back into my room. I looked at it. And it was a grungy old Barbie doll. I felt so guilty for screaming at my sister, and hearing her sob through the walls made me feel like a monster. I'd ripped her a new one over nothing. An old raggedy Barbie with missing hair and chewed up feet. My gem doll was somewhere in my room, she'd never taken it. Eventually I came out of my room and apologized to her. I explained why I was so mad and what I had incorrectly assumed, and I told her that it wasn't her fault. The neighbor girl's dad was a crazy asshole. He later apologized to her and his daughter too, but that made me feel just as bad as he was. It's been over a decade since that happened, and my sister and I have both moved on and have a great sibling relationship, but I still feel so horrible about how I treated her when I was a teenager. I wish I had been more level-headed. Edit, I am so stunned by the response to this comment. I'm also surprised how many gem fans there are on Reddit. Feel free to follow my gem blog, /shameless plug.
Babynuggt says, "My dad was a loving father and I loved him with all my heart. He was like my best friend and there was no thing I couldn't tell him. But he was an alcoholic. Sometimes things got really bad and he was a mess and I tried to help him to get better. There was also times when he didn't drink, but that time he was drinking a lot and had couple seizures. I was so worried about him and stayed at his place almost every night for a year. When I wasn't there I always slept with my phone so he could call me if something was wrong. I was only 19 years old at the time and one day I was so tired to take care of him that I said sometimes I wish he was dead so I can start living my own life. After I said it I felt so bad and I didn't mean it. I loved him so much. Only 2 days later he was found dead at his house. He had a seizure because he had taken alcohol and some pills. That was the worst thing I have ever said and I wish I never said it. Sorry, my bad English." Edit, thank you so much for your answers. I didn't expect so many to write me back. Your messages has been so nice and made me feel so happy. Thank you so much all of you. Edit 2, I also want to say thank you for sharing your own stories. It's so heartbreaking to hear what you have been through. I hope you guys stay strong.
If Zero Knee says, "I had a really cliché high school bully situation. Even explaining why sounds incredibly stupid to 30-something-year-old me. He was a year older and liked my girlfriend, despite having his own. He and my girlfriend graduated, all of us broke up, I became friends with his girlfriend. Friends. Operative word. He started showing up at the school, places where I was etc. He egged my mom's house and stole her mailbox. Showed up at my house during a party with all his friends and tried to fight me etc. but couldn't really explain himself when questioned and had no real response when I was like, bro, I'm just not gonna fight you. So I mean, obviously you don't fuck with my mom. I borrowed some paintball guns from a friend, got another friend, and the three of us drove up to the frat we knew he lived in. On a Friday, he went to college like one town over, and waited. It had a big lawn porch they all always hung out on. I did homework. After maybe half an hour, he comes outside to smoke a cigar on the porch with a few of his brothers. To those brothers, I'm sorry you got wrapped up in this, but war is war. We got out of the car a few doors down, had the driver go to the next block, and me and my friend crept up to the side of the porch, where there was a second staircase up onto it. And then, like a super bad version of SEAL Team 6, we lit that porch up bad. All of them. We did not discriminate. I'm talking we were within 10 feet of them, they only had like portable chairs as cover, and were drunk and caught totally off guard. This was a hit a mobster would have been proud of. We took off and our driver grabbed us a block away. A week later he sucker punched me in the face at a football game at my high school. I smashed nachos in his face, and like 15 people got involved in the brawl. He was banned from campus, and I got a cool detention slip for inciting a riot. Edit, I should add that I was both not a fighter and about half this dude's size, so asymmetric warfare was my only option. I should also add that we seriously considered freezing the paintballs, but ultimately we weren't monsters. Second edit, we also wore all black, and ski masks. Probably should have mentioned that.
MauOnTheRoad says, screaming at my little sister for over an hour for something that I messed up. I still feel incredibly bad every time I think about it. She had a hard time back then and I acted like such a fucking asshole. Edit, thank you for all the replies and advices. I will apologize, I have to. I was mean to her more than once, buried all of that deep inside me, and now it all comes up again, reading what some of you wrote. Won't imagine how she must feel when she remembers. I'm somehow afraid, but I will. Right now I'm thinking about how she doesn't live here anymore. And sorry if my English is bad. Edit 2, I did it. Via text message. Maybe not the best way, but if she wants to talk about it, she now knows that she can. I wrote her that I remembered some situations in our childhood, that I realized that something was really wrong with me, and even if it's a little bit late, that I want to apologize for being such an asshole child and asshole teenager sometimes. I'm curious how she will react. Last edit, I swear. She replied that she remembers more how I protected her from a boy who was mocking on her. I threw him into a little creek and screamed at him that he better leaves her the FCK alone. Almost forgot about that.
ChaoticForkingGood says, my brother was in middle school, and he biked there every day. I told him that I hoped he got run over. He was hit by a car that very morning and had to be revived 12 times that day. Nobody expected him to live. I've never gotten over what I said. EDA, he lived, against all odds.
Racing_in_the_E_street says, I punched my car door once when my brother wouldn't open it for me. Immediately regretted it once I saw the dent. Also cost me a couple $100 to get that dent fixed.
LibrarianRip says, it's not something that I did, but something I came close to doing, that snapped me out of my rationalizing of a relationship and lingers as a warning feather in the back of my brain. I was in a very unhealthy, borderline abusive, relationship for 2 years with a woman who controlled me, isolated me from friends, etc. We argued constantly, and one night after what felt like weeks of arguing, we were screaming at each other again, while I held a heavy drinking glass, with water in it, in my hand. I was overcome with fury, and in that moment I came so close to just chucking the glass at the ground to shatter it, or at her to hit her. I just wanted to let my anger show, or prove a point, something, At the last moment I stopped myself. I've never hit or thrown anything during a fight, but that was my watershed moment, because I knew if I did I could never take it back, could never shatter the glass or unhurt her. We ended the relationship shortly after, but I try to keep that moment in mind in general. Words can't be unsaid and glass can't be unshattered. No anger is worth that much hurt.
Rowaan says. Had a tantrum, threw a coffee pot, over nothing that big. I was awful. As I know my husband will read this, I humbly apologize for being such a bitch last summer.
Spicy Deluxe 1 says. When I'm playing video games and get mad and want to smash my keyboard, I jump out of my chair and do some sort of Irish jig or something, I don't know what to call it, lol, to get all that motion out of me, and then sit back down and everything is normal again. TL, Doctor, if you were angry, dance like you're Irish.
MysticYounger says. I'm gonna fly kick your mom down a flight of stairs.
Asiansensationz says. Ran away from home. I was 10. I gathered some blankets and snacks, then headed to a mountain's resting place. I rode a bus for 2 hours, then hiked up a mountain to the resting area my dad and I used to enjoy ramen cups. There was a generator nearby which kept me warm. I drank water at the springs. Some campers even gave me food since there was a large camping ground a bit lower to the mountain. After 3 days, I just went home because I really had to poop, but I did not want to shit in the woods.
Dojowit says. I often hold my emotions in, and they all come bursting out at once with explosive consequences. At a job where I was just there for the paycheck and not much else, never going above and beyond, never volunteering, I had 2 bosses, one of whom was fair, and the other was a complete dick. Day after day, I catalogued things the dick manager did that was ineffective and useless, often mean. It was clear he wasn't very good at his job and often used a punishment of others to mask his incompetencies. One day, when he wrote me up for being 5 minutes late to work, I said fine. Other that day, he wrote me up for taking a break that was too long by 2 minutes. Whatever. Even later, he called me into his office and said he was writing me up for delaying work because he'd observed me moving slowly. This was a bridge too far and I let him have it. I told he was out of his league, 10 years older than me, and would never amount to anything beyond the associate's degree from community college and a job most high school seniors could do without the number of fuck-ups he had. I said he spent his time writing people up for being late when he waltzed in later than most workers most shifts, and was trying to hide his own flagrant rule breaking by pretending to be on top of others. No, I knew I wasn't a perfect employee, but if he spent less time on his computer and more time with the workers, he wouldn't have to write me up for being slow. He'd have to write himself up for being slow because he'd realize how fucking incompetent he was at even moving boxes. And then he fired me. I couldn't have been happier.
I'm too old for this says. I was helping 2 guy friends fix a transmission. One of them thought it would be funny to grab my breasts with his hands, leaving big oily handprints. I was pissed and ran after him, but he wasn't taking it seriously, laughing as he skipped away. I saw Ed, picked up a huge wrench, and chucked it at him. I saw it fly end over end and then hit his head in slow motion, but he dropped in fast forward. I just ran to get someone else. I knew he needed medical attention. He got 4 or 5 staples in his head, should have gotten stitches, but was afraid of needles, and a crazy scar. Funny thing is, he won't talk about it because he got beat by a girl. Fucking ridiculous. The boys in the group stopped messing with me quite as much as they used to, after that. But I could have seriously hurt him, or even killed him. It was a bad move. Edit for clarification. These were just friends. I'm not a mechanic by trade. This was 20 years ago. I'm no longer friends with this person. I know he won't talk about his scar because I'm still friends with his mother. And astonishingly, I have to clarify that I was absolutely mad about the sexual assault. Somehow some people got the idea that I was mad about the shirt? As if I'd be working on a transmission in a shirt I cared about at all? No, it wasn't the shirt. FFS, it was the unwanted assault.
Kingcanni says. I told my little brother that no one loved him and to just leave me alone. He died a couple weeks later in a car crash and I never had the balls to apologize, not that I even deserve to be forgiven. I miss you, Luke.
bluemosquevill says. I punched a wall when I caught my ex cheating on me. Now I have to live with this weird bump on my right hand. Probably a curled up tissue or cartilage of some sort.
ElTuxedoMex says. Yelled at my dad to piss off and stop criticizing my girlfriend because one day she might be my wife. I had 23 at the time. She dumped me a year later. A month after she dumped me, she began dating her neighbor, right next door. 3 months after she dumped me, they married. 5 months after she dumped me, they had a little girl. You don't know how much I regret what I said to my father. Edit, I was 23 at the time. Whoops.
Dionysus24779 says. I snapped for just a moment and hit the door with my fist, however the person I was talking to and who got me so upset thought for a moment that I was about to hit her. The way she stepped back and looked terrified of me will haunt me forever. I don't really want to elaborate on the situation though.
Nyamstom77 says. One of my friends in primary school had died in a car accident. One of my other friends pissed me off a few days later and I told him that he should have died instead. I was like 9 or 10 at the time.
DaughterEarth says. I ripped my shirt off of my sister in front of my friends, as in she was wearing my shirt. At the time I snapped. I could not deal with having absolutely nothing that was mine. There were much bigger issues, but that is what I snapped about. I want to crumple up and die of 1,000 paper cuts when I remember it. We're good now. We have fights, as sisters do, but we are best friends. Not even being an awful person in anger can get in the way of the bond that grows when you survive the stuff we got through. It is still the worst memory I have though. I wish I understood things then the way I do now, but we were both young teens drowning in our reality.
Jemull says. I sent a 3-page, single-spaced letter to my aunt telling her that her entire side of the family were assholes and I would have nothing more to do with them.
Team96 says. I don't care that you broke your elbow.
OneFishBone says. I told my mother she should made an abortion because I would rather be dead than listening to her bullshit. She is a good mother but the backstory is too complicated to explain.
Beautiful_day says. I was being baited by a couple of people online. One of the girls tragically had lost her parents in the tsunami in Asia back in 2004-2005. Well, she really kept calling me heinous shit online and started getting others to do the same. She told me to say the worst thing I could as I was clearly too thick to think of any rebuttal. To cut a long story short, I said, your parents purposefully jumped in the water to kill themselves as it'd be less painful than dealing with you. Needless to say, when I got into 6th form, UK 16 to 18 years, the next day, I got suspended pending investigation for 3 days. The silver lining is that they found evidence they bear-baited me a lot and frequently bullied me, so they had to apologize in writing to me.
MarkedMoon says. I was in an emotionally abusive relationship for years. At one point I snapped when he told me he was dating someone else as well and I went after every weak point I knew he had, mentioning everything he was insecure about and told him after I was finished that he was a worthless person with no more than trash and kicked him out of my car, made him walk home.
eDgAR says. When I was in college I got drunk one night and punched a pint glass out of frustration. It ended up slicing my finger really badly, like there was a flap of skin that came up. Went to the bathroom and ran it underwater, but it just kept bleeding. I didn't know what to do and was too drunk to try to deal with it, so I just trapped my hand in a towel and tried to go to sleep. Woke up to knocking at my door and it ended up being security. He followed a trail of blood from the bathroom to my room and wanted to make sure I was alright. I showed him my finger and he was like, "Come on, you gotta go to the hospital." Dude was a bro and drove me there even though it was like 3 a.m. Saw a doctor and he had to give me a bunch of stitches. He said I was very lucky because if it was just a tiny bit deeper I would have probably had done permanent damage and lost mobility of the finger. Now I have this scar on my finger shaped like a Nike swoosh, remind me not to be stupid and try to fight glass.
Forgetful_panda says. I rubbed my sister's toothbrush on my brother's deodorant.
Deleted says. Committed child abuse. Don't take anger issues lightly. If you have them, or think you have them, seek help.
Teenage_hand model says, I've said some really awful things to my wife in the heat of a fight. I've regretted every single one of them.
Halt_yum_reptar says, broke up with a girlfriend I really loved and had no real reason besides being angry at mostly myself and not doing the right thing of working on us and talking to her about the minor issues I had. Yup. That sucked. I had a lot of issues I needed to work on, and have gotten help.
OperationStickBeatin says, so this is back in the Skype era when anyone could change the group/call name. A couple of girls kept changing the name of it and teenage me got more and more angry cause I wanted it to be a specific thing. Now, I was close with one of the girls and she had confided in me that the love of her life had died in a car crash. Pretty terrible stuff. You may see where this is going. Teenage me had enough and decided to insult the girls rather than give up, so I changed the group name to something along the lines of, "No wonder your BF left you behind." And that's my biggest regret.
Cool Border says, yelled at the person I was arguing with, I'd rather get hit by a fucking truck. Doesn't sound bad unless you know that I have, in fact, been hit by a truck, last afoot, and so I know exactly what that would entail. So they knew I meant it.
Daniela11 says, I said this to my mom, in reference to my dad, whom I have had many struggles with. Respect is earned, not owed. Didn't he learn this lesson with his first son? My dad was previously married and he has lots of regrets in regards to not having contact with his son from that marriage. I feel as though I have somehow put a terrible burden on my mom by saying that.
AKM92 says, started a riot at a 16th birthday party at a church because a supposed friend got with a girl I was sort of seeing. In hindsight, she was trying to make me jealous and it probably wasn't his fault, but regardless I went for him and he ran home, so me being extremely angry went a walk with another mate to calm down somewhat. When we came back there was police and ambulances at the church. We quickly learned that me starting a fight led to folk looking for who started it, to them blaming folk from another school, which basically started a gang war based on where you grew up, while me and my mate had a nice walk.
ThesesSaggyMeatballs says, I punched a priest in a prestigious high school. He told me I was a disgrace to my mother. I dropped him so fast got expelled. My mom told me she would have done the same thing, lol.
Colin1023 says, I had just gotten back home after trying to kill myself and my older brother was mocking me and calling me different vulgar names. I got so angry that I started punching the wall and didn't stop until my hand was broken in multiple places and a good-sized hole in the wall. I'm not an angry person, but being mocked just sets me off in a way nothing else does.
Who_me_vn says, my mom's the strongest woman I know. We were in an argument one day, and as I was complaining about the troubles I was going through in my life, which are on reflection trivial, she said, well, we've all been through hardships in our lives, as to try and end the argument. She was referring to her dad, who died when she was young. She loved him a lot, still misses him terribly, but she never shows it. So I was kind of taken aback. Before I could think, I responded with, sorry, I haven't lost anyone. I was angry that I thought she wasn't taking my problems seriously, but I see now that she was only trying to put them into perspective. I felt so ashamed of what I had said and I apologized immediately afterwards. Never let anger blind you.
Two Beagles says, I'm absolutely certain I've done worse, but I was 13 or 14. I told my dad I hated him. He cried. I still feel that so deeply in my heart. I do not now or then hate my dad. I love him so much. It taught to me to be so much more careful. I think I have said worse things when furious. I'm pretty sure I meant them, though, so I don't feel so much regret. In adulthood, my rage is very cold and precise. Cruelty and truth is my ultimate style. Not proud. Not pleasant. But at least I don't make my dad cry.
Cyborg Alucard says, I came close to killing a guy. And had the situation even been slightly different, I may have. A few years ago when I was 17, my dad, for lack of a better term, had everything failure. One after the next his organs just stopped functioning. And he was being kept alive by just about every machine medical science has produced so far. And in turn my father lost his ability to speak, so he needed someone to take over guardianship, so he had someone to make decisions for him. You have to be 18 to be a guardian, and I was only 17 at the time, so my mom applied for guardianship. Why wouldn't she be his guardian, right? She was denied guardianship. So as a result the court appointed some hoity-toity looking motherfucker as his guardian instead. And this man would listen to nothing we had to say. I hated this man more than anything. My mom and I had decided at a point that the next time my dad would have some sort of organ attack we would allow the doctors to make him comfortable and let him go. The appointed guardian denied it. Finally, about 6 months later, I meet this fucker for the first time in my father's hospital room. He legally needed to tell my dad something in person, I guess. I'm not exactly sure. But my mom and I were there at the time, and the second I saw his wormy face I got up to give him a piece of my mind. I didn't ask. I didn't plead. I didn't beg. I demanded that the next time they can make him comfortable to let him go. And this fug, this scum of the earth, had the audacity to look me in the eyes and tell me, "I'm keeping your father alive because by doing so he's earning me $10,000 a month." Let me tell you guys something. You've had road rage, maybe you've gotten mad at a game you're playing, you've probably had a pretty nasty argument with someone before. But pure, raw, unfiltered anger is the most intense emotion you will ever feel in your life. And when that man said that to me, I was literally seeing red. My blood started to rush and my knuckles turned hot. I punched this fucker so hard in his dicky face that he cracked his jaw. It was 100% adrenaline. If I tried punching anyone that hard again, it'd come up so short they'd probably laugh at me. But he stumbled backward, fell, and hit his head on the door handle. And I am incredibly thankful that this nurse was in the room, because he was this huge buff meat man that looked nothing like a nurse, but he was able to hold me back and restrained me. And I don't like to think this way, but had that nurse not been there that day, I may have actually killed this guy. Some other nurses come by and escort the fuckface someplace, and my mom said we needed to go. Car ride home was pretty quiet. But as we approached the house, my mom parks the car and says, "I love you, I'm not mad at you for what you did. But brass tacks, you did assault that man. And you should prepare yourself to talk to the police." Couple more months pass and I finally turn 18, and the day I turned 18 I went and applied for guardianship of my dad. The court hearing was about a week later. Not only did I never hear from fuckface or the police, but he handed over guardianship without any resistance. The hearing lasted all but 20 seconds. I like to think I knocked some sense into that guy. But who knows? Not like I was gonna ask him or anything. But yeah. That's the worst thing I've ever done out of anger. DLDR, punched the soul out of some lawyer shithead. Earn guardianship of my father as a reward.
Epiphany says, "This one time I was having a mental breakdown due to losing my friend to heroin. A person was showing a lot of empathy and really did understand what I was going through. In my anguish, I stated this. Oh, don't give me that cliché bullshit. I know that bullshit is all fake, you bitch." Then I proceeded to mock her words in a very disrespectful voice. Looking back now, I feel super bad. I wish I could apologize, but she graduated and left the state a couple years ago.
Cosmo Bunnies says, "When my brother and I were kids, I think I was 10 and he was 6, we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Forbidden Memories on the PlayStation. I discovered a bug by accident that would allow you to duplicate cards, so I did it for our Meteor B dragons on both memory cards. The next day we had McDonald's and my McFlurry was missing, and I accused him of eating it. I was so mad that I stole his memory card and got rid of the duplicated dragons, with a nasty little note. He was heartbroken and we later found out it was our mom that ate it. I still feel awful all these years later, but we have a great brother-sister relationship now."
6 Harvard says, "On my 21st birthday I had to work. No problem, I worked at a bar, I figured I'd get off and have a drink or two to celebrate. My dad and uncle show up already hammered. I love my dad and uncle, but they have issues with alcohol. I drink maybe half a beer cause I'm so embarrassed by my dad and uncle at my job and suggest we leave. My dad decides he is going to drive and I think not a great idea, but he's the adult. He nearly crashes twice until he stopped at a gas station for more beer. I get into the driver's seat pissed off cause I don't want him to drive. We get home and I scream at him, get your fucking life together. You're hammered drunk and just tried to drive with your fucking kid in the car. Fucking figure it out. I saw the hurt but I think he needed it. He still has issues with alcohol but I can't figure out how to help him. Ultimately it's his choice to get the help, but it hurts to watch him drink himself to death.
Apex@1 says, I was in elementary school and was arguing with my older sister. Meant to call her a horse but called her a whore. Didn't mean it and I felt terrible, but I couldn't take it back as I'd lose the argument.
Sigao says, ended up getting exceptionally disappointed and angry when I got the tax bill last year. It was a ridiculous amount that will take a long time to pay off. It's the second time this has happened. Anyways, I punched a cabinet a couple times with a stifled shout, lived in an apartment with neighbors connected. Didn't break anything fortunately, save for the skin on my knuckles. Would have just cost me more. TL, doctor, fought a cabinet, cabinet 1.
Looney Agate says, forced my sister to apologize to me 1,000 times. I sat there and counted each of them. Can't recall how old I was at the back then.
LeoLuGirl89 says, my dad had seen something horrible on the news. He saw a blurry video of a young girl in Pakistan being dragged out of her house by her male family members and neighbors to be stoned to death. The video was a few minutes long, super blurry so you couldn't see anything, but he heard her screams and pleas clearly. It haunted him deeply. He was visibly distraught by this video for a good 2 to 3 days. Being the single father of a teen girl, I guess it struck a chord. Some time later, months? Years? We were fighting about something I wasn't allowed to do. I can't remember. I wanted to date, or hang out with a friend, and suddenly I said, why don't you just stone me to death then, like that girl? Meaning, you're acting like an extremist Muslim man, controlling me, depriving me of freedom. That stopped him in his tracks. The conversation just ended. I can't remember what happened after that, truly. I only remember the look on his face. I'm an adult now. My dad died in 2017. And one of the things that happens when you're grieving is that you think back on all the times you were an asshole to them. The memory randomly came into my mind and I whispered, sorry, Dad. I wish I had remembered this when he was alive. I would have begged for his forgiveness. That was the worst thing I ever said to my dad.
_Marther_ says, I've probably done worse at some point, but the one I feel the worst about is when my then girlfriend came over in a really talkative mood. I was feeling really low energy and just wanted to chill, so her talking started to really overwhelm me. But I overreacted and said, you haven't stopped talking since you got here, and I will never forget the defeated, sad look in her face. I still feel a knot in my gut when I think about that.
Arena Angus says, I told my father I'll be giving him water with a fork when he will be old.